leading up to Security Breach's release, everyone was pretty much in agreement that Vanny was some sort of alter ego that Vanessa got after Glitchtrap hopped into her mind at the end of FNAF VR. This was backed up by the emails that Lewis sends to Ness in FNAF AR, where Vanessa is looking up suspicious stuff like how to induce compliance in human subjects and oneself, and how far you can cut someone in half before they pass out. Security Breach seems to confirm this in a couple of the endings, and with Freddy pretty much outright saying it by pointing out how similar the name Vanny is to Vanessa, the community was feeling pretty good about getting a theory right. And then in one of the endings that seems to solidly reveal, yes, it was Vanessa in the Vanny costume this whole time, we get this. Oh, how did that get in there? I meant to show you this. Cue mass confusion as something that had seemed pretty obvious was apparently thrown out the window, or off the building. Like, how is Vanessa showing up alive on top of the building even though she should be dead? Was Vanny ever Vanessa in the first place? If they're separate, why on earth do they look so similar? And which one is actually Vanessa? The popular explanation seems to be that this scene is meant to show that Vanessa's spirit is still trapped in the Pizzaplex because the Princess Quest games haven't been beaten, and as such Glitchtrap is keeping her spirit captive in the games. It's an interesting theory, but it's unsatisfying to me for several reasons. First, if her spirit is connected to the Princess Quest games, which are elsewhere in the building, I don't see why she would appear on the roof where the fire escape lets out. Why bother going up there just to look down at your own dead body? Why wouldn't she appear by the arcade cabinet she's supposedly bound to? Second, if it was meant to hint at the Princess Quest ending in some way, it seems rather redundant since the Princess Quest ending is very clearly hinted at through in-game messages and whatnot, and it's relatively obvious that by not beating that ending, you don't free Vanny from Glitchtrap. Third, beating Princess Quest 3 seems to completely wipe Glitchtrap from the Pizzaplex, Vanny, staff bots, and whatnot all included. So I feel like beating the games isn't necessarily a matter of freeing Vanessa's spirit specifically, but rather getting rid of Glitchtrap, which would in turn free Vanessa's mind. While you're free to believe what you want, I think I have an explanation for what's going on with Vanny and Vanessa that answers questions not only around whether or not these two characters are one and the same, but also the comparisons that have been made with a certain Afton child in what I feel is a satisfying way for both those who think that Vanessa and Vanny are the same and those who believe they're separate. Or I'll just make everyone salty, but hey, I've come this far, may as well. With all that out of the way, my theory is Vanny is Vanessa, but only the Vanessa we know from Help Wanted and Special Delivery. Vanny is Vanessa the VR beta tester that got the Glitchtrap virus planted in her mind. The Vanessa that Lewis talked to in the AR emails. The Vanessa that gets yeeted off the Pizzaplex by Freddy. She is not, however, Vanessa the Pizzaplex security guard, though they are definitely meant to be similar enough for no one to notice the difference. You see, I believe that due to her rather questionable internet history and her behavior while at work, Vanny was drawing too much attention to herself, which could be how she landed herself in the company-mandated therapy sessions we hear on the retro CDs. This attention would make it difficult for her to do things that Glitchtrap/Afton is telling her to do without getting caught. If she just up and disappeared, not only would people be even more suspicious, but Vanny would be much more limited in what she could do in and around Fazbear Entertainment. However, if there was, say, another Vanessa to take her place, Vanny would be able to act almost completely unhindered, leaving the new Vanessa to take the fall. If you've watched my video on what I believe to be the true identity of Patient 46, you might see where I'm going with this. I believe that the Vanessa we see in Security Breach isn't Vanessa, but rather a robot built to look like and replace the original Vanessa. While it probably sounds like I'm grasping at straws a bit, there's actually a surprising amount of evidence to hint towards this being the case. Let me explain. For one, Vanessa is aware of and working with Glitchtrap, which wouldn't really work with the theory that Vanny is an alter ego she isn't aware of or has no control over. In the therapy tape, she's questioned about manipulative messages she's receiving from someone, and rather than denying getting the messages, she attempts to divert attention away from them by talking about her messages from Lewis. And when asked about what she's buying fur material for, she says this:
"I can't talk about this. He said he would always be watching."
If she wasn't aware of either of them, she wouldn't act the way she does in this exchange. But if she was the one buying the fur material, wouldn't that mean she's Vanny? After all, from Vanny's lines in Help Wanted, we know that Vanny made her own costume, since she literally says,
"I made it myself."
But that's the thing, isn't it? She made her own costume, but that doesn't mean she was the one to buy the materials. Replacement Vanessa could have easily been the one to buy the materials and hand them off to Vanny. Why do I think that Vanny wasn't the one who bought the materials? Well, in that same dialogue from Help Wanted, Vanny says,
"No one suspects anything."
Many people, myself included, had interpreted this to mean that no one suspected what she was up to as Vanny. However, after hearing the information in the therapy sessions, saying no one suspects anything is factually inaccurate. Sure, Lewis seems to pass off her strange searches and behavior as being for some sort of screenplay, but she still ends up in company-mandated therapy sessions where the therapists are given transcripts of her online conversations that they question Vanessa about. So saying that no one suspects anything is just wrong. This becomes especially clear since Vanessa buying costume materials isn't mentioned until her 7th recorded session. By that point, she's been questioned about who she's been speaking to / being manipulated by multiple times, meaning that by the time Vanny tells Glitchtrap or whoever that she has her costume put together, suspicion is definitely being thrown around, even if the therapists themselves are getting offed thanks to 46 whenever they push too far. At minimum, some of the employees in the IT department are suspicious enough to compile all her non-work related communications and send them to the therapists. This means that Vanny probably isn't referring to the Glitchtrap virus being in her head when she says no one suspects anything. However, if she's actually referring to no one suspecting Vanessa taking her place, a lot of things click into place. For example, Vanessa has a completely different voice actor from Vanny. Sure, Vanny's voice in Security Breach is modified, but again, going back to VR, her voice without all the glitch sound effects sounds noticeably higher pitched than Vanessa's, which we don't see or hear any comment on from any of the game's characters. In fact, in the first therapy session, the therapist mentions it's been a while since the two have seen each other, potentially giving an explanation for why she wouldn't notice the differences between Vanny and Vanessa if they'd been swapped during that time. It also explains why Vanny has beds set up in both her room in Fazbear and the Burn Trap boss fight room. If Vanny, still living her life as Vanessa, was living full-time at the Pizzaplex, that would probably attract unwanted attention if someone noticed she wasn't leaving. However, if the replacement Vanessa was going in and out for her shifts as normal, Vanny would be able to continue to hang around the Pizzaplex, kidnapping kids or whatever she gets up to, even when Vanessa is off shift. And when Vanessa is on shift, Vanessa can continue to divert attention from and help with whatever Vanny does through her position as sole security guard at the Pizzaplex. But what's interesting about Vanessa is that despite actively working to aid Vanny in Glitchtrap, she doesn't seem particularly happy about it. As one of the therapists point out, the person she's speaking to in the encrypted conversations is manipulating her. This seems a little strange since presumably she would have been built not only to look like Vanessa, but also to aid Vanny and Glitchtrap in their goals. But the therapy tapes show that her entire motivation seems to be fear of what will happen if she doesn't do what she's told. If she was just a robot built and programmed to do William Afton's bidding, the need for manipulation doesn't make much sense, and neither does Vanessa's fear and nervousness that she displays in the therapy tapes. But Vanessa isn't just a robot, is she? After all, whoever was going to replace Vanny needed to be able to play the part without attracting suspicion, something that could be difficult for just any old robot to accomplish. So why not get someone who has experience being human? Someone who would be relatively easily accessed for anyone who went down to the pizzeria simulator location underneath the Pizzaplex. Someone who knows
How to pretend.
I am far from the first person to suggest the idea of Vanessa being Elizabeth, with MatPat himself bringing it up in his first post-release security breach theory. So many of the similarities between the two have already been pointed out, but it has been almost 3 months since that game theory came out, so I feel like a refresher probably wouldn't hurt before I explain how some of these similarities are even possible and what they mean for Vanessa/Elizabeth as a character. There are, of course, the physical similarities in blonde hair and green eyes, and while I don't think her hair color is much of an indicator since she's supposed to match Vanny, the presence of Elizabeth's spirit was enough to change Circus Baby's eye color from blue to green, so the green eyes could be significant in the same way. Similarly, the fact that in the Princess Quest ending she's pictured eating ice cream could be intended to reference how Elizabeth was killed. In addition to this, there's a decent amount of information in the therapy tapes that hints toward Vanessa being Elizabeth. For example, Vanessa doesn't like dark basements and enjoys spending time outside, something that would make sense after being trapped underground as Circus Baby for who knows how long. According to Vanessa's files, her father is named Bill, which is immediately a flag due to being short for William, and the fact that the only established William in the series is the local decaying serial killer and Elizabeth's father, William Afton. When questioned about the materials for the Vanny costume, she has this back and forth with the therapist.
Are you talking about your dad? Have those feelings come up again? I hate sounding like a broken record, but this is something you really need to resolve if you're ever going to be happy.
I have. I compartmentalized him. He's locked away.
She doesn't deny it when the therapist asks if she's talking about her father. And seeing as Glitchtrap is basically a digital version of William Afton, this heavily implies that he's her father. Additionally, Vanessa's parents are divorced, and her father manipulated her into giving false testimony that ended up with her father winning the custody battle and something bad happening to her mother. If applied to Elizabeth, this could account for the absence of Mrs. Afton in all the games. But how would Elizabeth's information end up on Vanessa's file if Elizabeth died back in the 1980s? Well, this is answered in the recordings as well, since one of the therapists mentions that the person sending Vanessa the messages had hacked into the files with all of her personal information, and that they're the same files that the therapist has been using. Assuming that Glitchtrap or Afton or whoever was the one who hacked the files, he could have easily changed the files to describe Elizabeth's life rather than Vanessa's, since Elizabeth wouldn't know about all the events that Vanessa went through, and it would, as such, draw suspicion if she tried responding to any questions on that topic. With all this in mind, Vanessa's dialogue and behavior in the tapes makes a lot of sense. After what happened to her last time she disobeyed her father, Vanessa would be terrified of going against his orders again. It's why she's so set on doing what she's supposed to, and why when discussing testifying against her mother due to her father's manipulation in court, she feels the need to say that
I was supposed to be a good girl.
this is how and why Glitchtrap is able to get her to do what he wants, even though he's been compartmentalized in her mind. Scared of what will happen to her, and maybe even the original Vanessa if she doesn't do what she's told, Elizabeth aids Glitchtrap and Vanny in capturing Gregory and any other kids who go missing at the Pizzaplex. In one ending, things work out well for her as Gregory beats Princess Quest 3 and destroys Glitchtrap, allowing the original Vanessa to go back to her life, and Elizabeth, presumably, to leave the Pizzaplex with Gregory and Glamrock Freddy, free of her father's influence. In another, she's left alone on the roof of the burning Pizzaplex, not as the trapped spirit of Vanny, but as the literally and figuratively trapped spirit of Elizabeth, looking down on the body of the woman she replaced. What do you think? Is there something I didn't mention in the video that you think is important? If so, leave a comment so that I can respond. Or if that's not your cup of tea, check out the video I did on how Patient 46 could be a character besides Vanny or Gregory in a way that's just as, if not more satisfying to the story of Security Breach. I hope to see you all in the next video.